The elevator doors slid open on the 47th floor of Manhattan's most exclusive medical center, where doctors wore Patek Philippe watches and patients arrived in chauffeured Bentleys. Maya Rodriguez stepped out, her worn scrubs a stark contrast to the marble floors that gleamed like mirrors beneath her feet. She'd been a night shift nurse for 12 years, invisible to most, essential to all. Tonight, she was covering the pediatric intensive care unit, a last-minute replacement for a colleague who'd called in sick. Maya had learned long ago that in places like this, people like her were meant to blend into the background. She was the hands that changed IVs, the voice that soothed crying children at 3 a.m., the eyes that watched monitors while wealthy parents slept in adjoining suites more luxurious than her entire apartment. She'd made peace with it. Her job wasn't about recognition. It was about the kids who needed her. But nothing could have prepared her for what she was about to witness, or the impossible choice that would change everything in a matter of seconds. "You must be the replacement nurse." Dr. Harrisburg barely glanced up from his tablet as Maya approached the nurse's station. His tone carried that particular brand of dismissiveness reserved for people he considered beneath him. Around him, a team of specialists huddled in hushed conversation, their faces grave. "The patient in Suite 12 is Cameron Ashford." Yes, that Ashford. His father owns half of Lower Manhattan. The boy's been treated by the best pediatric specialists in the world. "We're managing a severe allergic reaction, but everything's under control. Just monitor his vitals and don't bother the family." Maya nodded, accepting the chart. Cameron Ashford, age 7. She'd read about the family in the papers. Tech billionaire Richard Ashford, whose innovations had revolutionized global communications. The kind of money that could buy anything, except apparently a cure for whatever was ailing his son. She entered Suite 12 quietly. The room looked more like a luxury hotel than a hospital, floor to ceiling, windows overlooking the glittering Manhattan skyline, a leather sofa where Cameron's father sat with his head in his hands, a mahogany desk covered in laptops and documents, and in the center of it all a small boy lay in the hospital bed, his face swollen and mottled with hives, his breathing labored despite the oxygen mask covering his nose and mouth. Richard Ashford looked up as she entered. His eyes were bloodshot, his expensive suit rumpled. For all his billions, he looked like what he was, a terrified father watching his child suffer. "Is there any change?" His voice cracked. Maya checked the monitors, her practiced eye scanning the numbers. "His vitals are holding steady, Mr. Ashford. Try to rest." "We're doing everything we can." It was the same thing the doctors had been saying for 3 days. She'd learned from the chart. Cameron had suffered an anaphylactic reaction during a family vacation in the Hamptons. They'd administered epinephrine, steroids, antihistamines, everything by the book. The swelling had decreased but never fully resolved. Now he seemed stuck in this twilight state, not getting worse but not getting better. The best allergists in the country had examined him. They'd tested for everything: foods, medications, environmental allergens. Nothing explained why the reaction wouldn't fully resolve. So they waited, monitoring him around the clock, hoping his small body would finally fight off whatever was attacking it. Maya settled into the chair beside Cameron's bed, her eyes moving between the boy and the monitors. It was going to be a long night. 3 hours passed. Richard Ashford dozed fitfully on the sofa. Maya made her rounds, checking Cameron's IV, adjusting his blankets, noting his vitals in the chart. She'd always had a habit of talking to her patients, even when they couldn't respond. "Hey there, buddy," she whispered. "I bet you're tired of this place." "I bet you miss playing outside, huh? Your dad told me you love baseball." She noticed his fingers twitch slightly. Was he responding to her voice? She leaned closer, studying his face. Something nagged at her, a whisper of intuition she couldn't quite name. That's when she saw it, a tiny flash of yellow-brown, barely visible beneath Cameron's hospital gown. Her heart stuttered. No, it couldn't be. Her hands moved before her mind fully processed what she was doing. She gently pulled back the collar of Cameron's gown, revealing his upper chest. There, pressed against his skin by the fabric, was a small medical alert bracelet, but not his own. The nameplate read Jennifer M., and clinging to the inside of the bracelet, so small it was almost invisible, was a bee. A dead bee, its stinger still intact. Maya's breath caught. She looked at the chart again, her mind racing. They'd tested for bee venom. Allergy, the initial. Reaction site on his arm had confirmed it. They'd treated it. But this was a second sting, probably happening hours after the first, so minor that no one had noticed it. The bee must have been trapped in his clothing from the original incident. The venom had been continuously leaking into his system for 3 days, maintaining just enough allergen load to prevent his recovery, but not enough to trigger another acute crisis. The bracelet wasn't even his. It must have belonged to a friend, a souvenir he'd been wearing under his clothes. No one had thought to check for it because medical alert bracelets were meant to help, not harm. She had seconds to decide. The protocol said notify the attending physician, but Dr. Harrisburg had made it clear he didn't value her input. She'd seen nurses dismissed, their observations ignored, precious minutes wasted while they fought to be heard. And she'd read Cameron's chart. She knew he'd been receiving antihistamines that would mask the signs of a new sting site. Knew that another dose of epinephrine was due in 20 minutes anyway as part of his scheduled treatment. But 20 minutes might be too late. She could see his oxygen saturation starting to dip, so subtle that the alarm hadn't triggered yet. His body was losing the fight. Maya's hand moved to the call button, then stopped. "Mr. Ashford," she said quietly but firmly. "Wake up! I need you to trust me right now." Richard jerked awake, confused. "What's wrong? Is Cameron—" "Listen to me very carefully. I found a bee trapped against your son's skin. It's been releasing venom for days. That's why he's not recovering. I need to remove it, clean the site, and we need epinephrine immediately, not in 20 minutes now. But I'm just a nurse, and if I go through proper channels, it could take time we don't have." Richard stared at her, his billion-dollar mind processing this information at lightning speed. She could see him calculating odds, weighing risks. His son's oxygen saturation dropped another point on the monitor. "Do it," he said. "Whatever you need. Do it now." Maya pressed the code button, then moved with practiced efficiency. She carefully removed the bracelet, extracted the bee with tweezers from her pocket kit, and cleansed the secondary sting site. She could now see clearly a tiny red dot that had been hidden beneath the metal. As the code team rushed in, she was already preparing the epinephrine. Dr. Harrisburg burst through the door, his face flushed with anger. "What the hell is going on?" "Who called a code?" "I did," Maya said calmly, not looking away from Cameron as she administered the injection. "Secondary sting site, venom exposure for approximately 72 hours. The source has been removed." "That's impossible." "We checked everything." "You checked everything? Except under a bracelet he was wearing that wasn't his." "Medical alert," Maya said. She held up the evidence bag containing the bee and the bracelet. It was pressed against his skin, continuously releasing venom in minute quantities. The room fell silent except for the beeping monitors. Everyone watched Cameron. 30 seconds passed. Then his oxygen saturation began to climb. The swelling around his eyes, which had remained stubbornly persistent for 3 days, began to visibly decrease. His breathing, barely noticeable beneath the oxygen mask, grew stronger, deeper. 15 minutes later, Cameron Ashford opened his eyes for the first time in 72 hours. "Dad?" His voice was small and hoarse, but it was the most beautiful sound Richard Ashford had ever heard. The room erupted in controlled chaos, doctors checking vitals, nurses adjusting equipment, specialists analyzing data. In the center of it all, Richard Ashford wrapped his arms around his son and wept. Maya stepped back, her job done. She began to quietly update the chart, making room for the specialists to work. This was their world. She was just passing through. "Wait," Richard's voice cut through the commotion. He stood, his arm still around Cameron, and looked directly at Maya. "You, what's your name?" "Maya Rodriguez, sir." "Maya Rodriguez." He repeated it like a prayer. "You saved my son's life. Every expert in this building missed it, but you saw it. Why?" Maya considered the question. "I'm a night shift nurse. Mr. Ashford, we're the ones who sit with patients when everyone else goes home. We watch, we notice, we care because that's all we can do. Sometimes that's enough." Richard shook his head, tears still streaming down his face. "It's more than enough. It's everything." Dr. Harrisburg cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Well, excellent work, Nurse Rodriguez. Very observant. I'll make sure this is noted in your file." Maya almost laughed. Noted in her file. After 12 years of being invisible, of being treated like furniture with a stethoscope, now she'd be noted. But as she looked at Cameron, his small hand clasped in his father's, his eyes clearer with each passing moment, she realized she didn't need notes and files. She didn't need recognition or accolades. She'd needed only to do what she'd always done. Pay attention, care deeply, act decisively. She'd needed to be exactly who she was. "Mr. Ashford," she said softly, "your son is going to be fine. He'll need monitoring for another day or so, but the worst is over. Spend this time with him. That's what matters." As she turned to leave, Richard Ashford's voice stopped her once more. "Maya, thank you. Thank you for seeing my son when everyone else just saw a patient. Thank you for trusting yourself when you had every reason to doubt. And thank you for showing me that the most valuable people in this building aren't wearing the most expensive watches. They're wearing worn scrubs and working the night shift because that's where they're needed most." Maya smiled, tears pricking her own eyes now. "I was just doing my job, sir." "No," Richard said firmly. "You were being human. You were being kind. You were being everything right with this world, and I'll never forget it." As Maya walked back to the nurse's station to complete her paperwork, she passed her reflection in one of those gleaming marble walls. She saw what she'd always seen, a tired woman in scrubs, a little gray starting to show at her temples, laugh lines around her eyes from years of smiling at frightened children. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, she also saw something else. She saw someone who mattered, someone whose attention to detail, whose refusal to stop caring, whose simple human kindness had quite literally saved a life. The elevator doors closed behind her at the end of her shift, carrying her back down from the 47th floor to the street level, back to her regular world. But she carried something new with her. Now, a reminder that in a world obsessed with credentials and status, sometimes the most powerful force is simply someone who cares enough to truly see. And sometimes that's all it takes to change everything.